For what purposes does the gentlewoman from Illinois rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks on H.R. 861 and to insert extraneous material thereon.
Objection, so ordered. Pursuant to House Resolution 170 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House now in the Committee of the whole House on the State of the Union for the consideration of H.R. 861. The Chair appoints the gentleman from New Hampshire, Mr. Bass, to preside over the Committee of the Whole.
The House is in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for the consideration of H.R. 861, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill to rescind a third round of funding for the Neighborhood Stabilization Program and to terminate the program.
Pursuant to the rule, the bill is considered read the first time. The gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Biggert, and the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Frank, each will control 30 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Illinois.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I rise in support of H.R. 861, the Neighborhood Stabilization Program Termination Act, and I commend my colleague, Mr. Miller, for introducing this bill that would end NSP. As I mentioned during debate on the rule for this bill, in total, Congress has appropriated $7 billion for NSP. This bill would save taxpayers up to $1 billion. Instead of stabilizing neighborhoods, NSP allows lenders and servicers to offload their bad investments onto taxpayers. And some critics point to the hazard of NSP, which actually may speed up foreclosures for families. If the lenders and servicers know that they can quickly sell the property to a nonprofit or local government with NSP funds, why wouldn't they do this? Why wouldn't they simply evict the homeowner instead of doing a proprietary private sector funded modification of the mortgage that would allow the homeowner to keep his home? This program does not help homeowners before disclosure. And the bottom line is that if the lenders and servicers own a home due to foreclosure, not the taxpayers, but these same lenders and servicers are responsible for the upkeep, security, and eventual sale of that home. Why should the taxpayer pay for this responsibility, which rightly belongs to the lender or servicer? They shouldn't. The GAO, the HUD Inspector General, and other auditors have noted that the program is plagued with problems, including lax reporting requirements and poor accountability. There is no evidence to suggest that funds spent through NSP have produced cost-effective results. Finally, upon the sale of a property, NSP does not require these groups to return the profit to the taxpayer. Instead, the money is treated like a slush fund. This money is never returned to the taxpayer, but will stay with the local governments and nonprofit entities that received it. Of course, any group would support keeping the profits of homes sold instead of returning it to the taxpayer. Who wouldn't? We need to break down barriers that have delayed recovery in the housing market, including expensive and ineffective government programs like NSP. We need to stop funding programs that don't work with money we don't have. NSP doesn't stabilize neighborhoods. It simply spends billions of taxpayer dollars to allow a few homes scattered here and there to be purchased, rehabilitated, and resold. Again, upon the sale, the money is never returned to the taxpayer. We are facing a $14.1 trillion national debt. This debt is damaging our economic recovery and stifling job growth. We've been warned. Economists say that if we don't address our debt within a couple of years, we could end up bankrupt, like Greece. Economists also agree that we must reduce our out-of-control government spending to create a more favorable environment for private sector job growth. Unemployed Americans and homeowners need a job and a paycheck, not a handout or another failed taxpayer-funded government program. With that, I would reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady reserves the balance of her time. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 3 minutes to a member of the committee, the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch.
Gentleman from Massachusetts recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the gentleman for yielding. I do want to point out that the the neighborhood stabilization program that we're talking about here today isn't just dealing with foreclosures. As we all know in this country, there have been pockets where the foreclosure phenomenon and the wave of foreclosures and property abandonment has been concentrated. I have an area like that in my district in the area of Brockton, Massachusetts. But I can point to other areas all across this country. What the neighborhood stabilization program allows is for cooperation between communities, banks, lenders, homeowners, and services to either preserve home ownership or in areas across this country, such as in Illinois and Nevada, California, Florida, where thousands of units have been abandoned in one concentrated area, it allows us to address those abandoned properties where the lender has taken a walk, the homeowner has taken a walk, the servicer has taken a walk, and the surrounding community of homeowners who are trying to stay in their homes are having, first of all, their property values lowered because of the density of abandoned properties in their neighborhood. This neighborhood stabilization program provides the only opportunity for us to address that crisis. We're trying to put a floor under the housing market in this country. Some of us are, and this is one program that allows us to do that. So I rise in opposition to this bill. I ask that we rethink this idea about eliminating the 4 voluntary programs that we've got to support housing and to support families that are in a tough spot right now. And I just urge my colleagues to oppose the underlying bill and to try to preserve the neighborhood stabilization program. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Illinois.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Grimes, a member of the Financial Services Committee.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, gentlewoman, and thank you, Chairman. I rise today to support this bill because it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. This is exactly why I came to Congress. This bill hurts struggling homeowners. It doesn't help them because it gives some type of perverse incentive for the banks to foreclose, because that's what this program actually does. It purchases these homes from the lenders, from those that are already foreclosed. That's not helping struggling homeowners. I don't deny that the intent was very good, but it is not following out on that intent. It's reckless, it's being misused, and it's wasting millions of taxpayer dollars. It really ends up being nothing more than another bailout. That's the last thing that we need, is another bailout. And it's a double hit to the taxpayer. Why? Very simple. Because when the city or municipality purchases this home, that means there's no taxes paid. And the argument is, well, there's no taxes being paid now because it's abandoned. But that's not true, because there's something called a tax lien. And the private sector at some point will buy that tax lien, and that municipality will get its incentive. So for many, many reasons, this bill is failing. It does not follow through on the intent, and we must stop the out-of-control, reckless spending, and this is exactly where we need to start. This type of program. $1 billion of hard-working taxpayers' dollars. Let's end the bailouts. Let's stop and remember that the answer to everything is not the government. Often it's the government that's the problem. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself 30 seconds to say that the gentleman has just explained why this is bad for the cities. Every organization representing cities and counties and local governments and local economic development agencies disagrees with him. They have written to us and asked us to support this program because he is simply wrong about the tax implications, and under general leave I will submit it for the record, and I now yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from California, Mr. Baca.
The gentleman is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you. I thank the gentleman from Massachusetts for yielding today. Today we're here again not to discuss any piece of legislation that will create jobs, but to eliminate a program that helps communities across the country. And I state communities that help across the country. The Neighborhood Stabilizing Program allows local government to purchase, rehab, and sell foreclosure properties. Without these programs, houses would stay empty, and I say would stay empty, so we would have to look at our neighborhoods and other areas, causing the values of property to plummet. Local neighborhoods would be forced to use their own funds to maintain measures and legal fees. Additionally, any empty properties also force communities to adjust and deal with the missing tax revenue. And I say missing tax revenue at a time that we need the additional revenue within our communities. A lot has been made about my colleagues on the other side about one particular group that receives NSP funds, Chicano por la Casa. What if it was another name? It didn't matter. But because it has the name of Chicanos, the stereotypes and the images that are there, it's about programs that are doing good, not because of the name that is there. Chicanos por la Casa has unmatched records of providing affordable housing, stabilizing neighborhoods, and serving the needs of low-income communities. They offer a broad range of programs and services and serve over 1,000 clients each year, many who live below the federal poverty, which is a family of 4 is only $22,000. In 2009, the Chicanos led the application for a group of 13 members of the National Association of Latino Communities Asset Builders. Together, this group received over $130 million in NSP funds and put this money to use in projects like California, where we have a high deficit, Arizona, and 16 other states. Instead of looking out for Wall Street and protecting the banks that caused the crisis, and I said they caused the crisis, NSP awards this funding to invest in mainstream. This award represents one of the largest single federal investments ever made that target Latinos and low-income communities, the same communities that have seen a higher rate of foreclosure and unemployment than the national average. I would ask my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to go to the communities where Chicanos or Hispanic or Latinos and their parents spent their money. Instead of using this tunnel vision, I say this tunnel vision, solely looking at the numbers, I would ask my friends to look at the actual work that is done in the communities and how those communities have improved and have gotten a lot better. It's time to stop letting partisan talking points set the agenda for our government. It's time that we start focusing on programs, I state. It's time that we start focusing on programs like NSP and the Chicanos por la Casa that help the Americans get back on their feet. I yield back and I urge my colleagues to oppose this bill.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentlelady from Illinois.
I yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from California, the sponsor of this bill and the chairman of the Subcommittee on Financial Services on International Monetary Policy and Trade. Mr. Miller.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
I enjoyed the comments from my good friend Mr. Baca from San Bernardino County. I have some correspondence from San Bernardino County might interest him. According to the county offices, there's no one at the county that would support current NSP programs, period. The letters of support did not come from San Bernardino County, which is one of the hardest hit in the nation. In fact, the county might have supported the current NSP, but this is before they fell victim to complete lack of direction from HUD, mixed messages from HUD, and gross misallocation of awards that were released. As it applies to my bill, the county says, quote, "We believe it is a means for Congress to get its financial house in order, just like the challenges we are facing at the local level." Mr. Baca made a very nice written speech, but his own county that he represents does not support the program. The problem we have, and I was disappointed that a group called Chicanos por la Casa was mentioned. Well, let me just talk about the numbers that I have a problem with. This NSP allocation program was meant to be a one-time program. It ended up 3 times. Now, the allocations apply. The problems I had, when you look at a county the size of Los Angeles County, they got $26.3 million. San Bernardino County, Mr. Baca's county, got $33.2 million. Orange County got $4.3 million, and San Diego County got $5.1 million. Now, all of these counties had to apply Davis-Bacon rules and wage standards to rehab these houses, which meant it cost 25% more to do it than the private sector could have done it on a competitive bidding nature. Now, my good friend Mr. Baca mentioned one group as if I had something against Chicanos. The problem I have is that non-government agencies such as Neighborhood Lending Partners got $50 million. $50 million. The Community Builders, Inc. got $78.6 million. Los Angeles Neighborhood Housing Services, Inc. got $60 million. Neighborhood Lending Partners of West Florida, Incorporated got $50 million. Chicanos por la Casa got $137 million. Understand, L.A. County got 26.3, San Bernardino County got 33.2, Orange County got 4.3, San Diego County got 4.5. The largest population base in California got less money than Chicanos por la Casa. Does that make anybody in America happy? And the problem with that
Would the gentleman yield?
I would love to.
Does the gentleman not want to mention that Chicanos por la Casa?
I reclaim my time. If it had been Germans for affordable housing, I would have opposed it. Had it been Italians for affordable housing, I would have opposed it. Had it been Irish Germans for affordable housing at $137 million, I would have opposed it. Understand, these are taxpayer dollars from people who lost their houses, people who are behind in their payments, people who are facing foreclosure, and none of this money does one thing to help you. It was not an equitable allocation based on who got money and how they got it. In fact, a lot of these private groups write off 17% off the top for overhead and cost. 17%. Now, we talked about banks. When we lent banks some money in TARP 1, they paid us interest. We made money because we got our money back. Freddie and Fannie, the money we allocated to them, we're charging them 10% interest, and they have to pay us back. And the American public is furious at that. We just gave away $50 million to one private group, 878 to another, 60 to another, 50 to another, and as my good friend Joe Baca says, Chicanos por la Casa, the poor group, got $137 million given to you. We're not charging you interest. We gave you the money. Now, are we helping housing in this country? No. Housing starts fell 22% in February, the lowest level since 1959. It's done nothing for housing. 11.8% fall in single family, 47% fall in multifamily. Tell me one thing this has done. It has not kept one person in their house. Now, let's assume this is supposed to be helping poor people buy houses. You just lost your house. In Hawaii, a person making $73,825 can buy a house through these organizations. A person in California making over $68,000 can buy a house through these organizations. A group in Virginia, $74,000. New Jersey, $78,000. Massachusetts, $72,000. Utah, $75,000. Alaska, $76,000. Colorado, $73,000. New Hampshire, $79,000. So a group, an entity, a state, a county, a city can buy a house. They have to sell it for less than they have in it, and they can sell it to people making more than the person who that lost the house. Now, how in the world does that do one thing for poor people? It does not do one thing for poor people. Now, let's talk about jobs. If we'd invested $1 billion in the construction industry to build houses, you would have got 2.8.
Another 2 minutes.
Gentleman's recognized.
If you would have invested $1 billion, you would have generated $2.8 billion in economic activities, $5.5 million in wages, $138 million in income for small businesses, $156 million in corporate profits, $1.98 billion in spending on goods and services from the above three line items. It's huge. So if we're talking about jobs, let's create jobs. Now, they say we have had no alternative to what they did. In 2008, I endorsed a bill and introduced it called the Public-Private Partnership Community Stabilization Act. It took government dollars, invested them with private groups to do the same thing, to buy houses that were foreclosed upon in rehab and communities. And when the houses were sold, guess what? The money would have been paid back to the federal government. We would have probably made a profit. We wouldn't have given a dime away. We would have made money on doing the same thing. Now, the other side talks about abandoned houses. Not a dime of this money can be used for eminent domain. So either the house is for sale or it can't be bought. It can't be foreclosed upon by the government through eminent domain. So to say that some private group could not have bought this house and rehabbed it themselves is ludicrous, because the house has to be for sale. Now, this group can go out and buy the house, demolish it, end up with a vacant lot. They can go out and buy a house, rehab it, and sell it for $1, $10, any amount they want to sell it for to anybody they want to sell it to, as long as it's less than they have in it. I had a bill passed out of the House that Mr. Frank co-sponsored. He thought it was a good bill that allowed banks to take foreclosed properties and lease them for 5 years. If you want to get rid of foreclosed properties, allow banks to take the properties, rehab it, put it on the marketplace, lease it out for 5 years, would have done the same things, and perhaps banks would have not have driven the marketplace down on resales because they glutted it with foreclosures. We could have taken these houses, leased them. In 5 years when the market turned around, they could have sold them. And guess what? They could have given a lease option to the person who was losing the house to stay in the house for 5 years and buy it back at the end of 5 years. It would have at least helped foreclosure projects. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
I yield myself for the 30 seconds the gentleman wouldn't allow me to mention. Chicanos Policosa, which he keeps invoking, in what I must say is an inflammatory way, yes, it has $137 million in 8 states. It's a consortium of several groups. Comparing it to one county is quite misleading. It is $137 million to an organization that has 8 states in which it works and which has produced affordable housing units. And as to his argument that this is not for the poor people, almost all of the groups in this country that advocate for housing for low-income groups have sent us a letter urging that this go forward, Habitat for Humanity and others. I take them as more credible on this than my friend, and I yield 60 seconds now to the gentleman from Indiana.
The gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Ranking Member Frank. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, as our nation's economy moves forward, we must not forget about our neighborhoods and continue to help those areas that are still struggling to come back. That is why I am appalled at the efforts to terminate the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. In my own district of Indianapolis, the neighborhood of Mapleton Fall Creek has been revitalized with NSP funds. What were once eyesores are now magnets for crime. They have been renovated and they are now for resale. These improvements have encouraged low and middle-income residents to settle into areas known for abandonment and blight. New businesses have opened, and an area once in decline is actually blossoming again. This was all possible because of NSP funding. We must continue this program for the neighborhoods in Indianapolis and across this great nation. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentlelady from Illinois.
I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from California.
Gentleman's
I
recognized.
seem to have hit a nerve with my good friends on the other side of the aisle when I said Chicanos por la casa. It's not who it went to. It's not a government agency. If it was Germans for affordable housing, it's $137 million that I object to, going to a group that is non-government entity that has the money that we will not get back. And we keep talking about letters of support. Now, if you're a city, a county, or you're one of these nonprofit groups that receive the money, you would be an absolute hypocrite to take the money and then not send a letter saying, thank you for the money, I think the money was well spent because you gave it to me to spend. Nobody would take money that they didn't want to take.
I yield.
The gentlelady.
I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from New Mexico.
The gentleman from New Mexico is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise today in support of H.R. 861, the Neighborhood Stabilization Program Termination Act. The program has been ill-fated from the start. It has been plagued with problems. We've given almost $7 billion into a program that has yet to work. HUD was slow in getting the money out the door. Poor reporting has hampered our ability to even measure what has been happening on the program. Further, the NSP simply acts as a taxpayer bailout for risky lenders, services, and real estate speculators who bet on the housing market and now can't sell their properties. It's become an even bigger example of those people who believe that the government is the solution to the problems. Government is not the solution to the problem. Government is the problem. We are spending $3.5 trillion in our annual government spending, and we're bringing in $2.2 trillion. Next year, we're going to have a deficit of $1.6 trillion, and it is composed of programs exactly like this, programs that do no good, that don't really cause the market to cure itself, and instead taxpayers pay the bill for people who have been speculating and people who just want out. I had a friend in the office today who talked about his situation with a house in Tucson where he got in at a higher price than it should have been. He was willing to settle for a lesser amount. He was willing to pay. But because the bank could go to the government and make up the difference, they did not have to negotiate with this individual homeowner. Instead, this program causes lenders to say the taxpayer will make us whole and we're not going to take our losses. The market will cure the problems that we face if we allow the market to work. But this government program does not allow the government to work. This nation is dying for jobs, and it is government spending, government regulation, and government taxation that are causing the jobs to be killed and to be sent out of this country. If we will get our focus correct on lowering taxes, lowering the regulatory environment, especially to lenders who would be out lending now, except they're afraid to because of the regulatory environment, we would begin to create jobs for the first time in a long time. With 9% unemployment, it is time for us to cure the problems of the economy, to quit spending in wasteful programs, and to give this country a leg up on prosperity. That's the thing we're missing right now. The hope of prosperity for the middle class is gone, and it's because of programs like this soaking the taxpayer and giving money to people who probably could do something different. It is not fixing up any neighborhood. I don't see the reports in any magazine or newspaper telling us the flock of people moving to these rehabilitated neighborhoods. With that, Mr. Chairman, I rise to express support for H.R. 861 and yield back the balance of my time.
Time of the gentleman's expired. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Well, I yield myself 15 seconds. The gentleman from California says he's not singling out Chicanos La Causa. There were other private organizations, but he never mentions them. And he says, well, they're not a government entity. That's right. We don't think it all has to go through the government. We think places like Habitat for Humanity and others have a role to play. I yield 3 minutes to the former mayor of the city of Somerville, Massachusetts, the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Capuano.
Gentleman from Massachusetts recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman for yielding. The most legitimate argument I've heard is that we have a deficit and we have to deal with it. That is a fair and reasonable point to make. However, it is not a fair and reasonable approach towards the problem to begin with programs like this. We can't even talk about what we're spending in the Iraq War. We can't talk about any money in the Defense Department or any place else. The first programs we start with are these types of programs. Let me be clear about what this program is. I'm a former mayor and a strong mayor form of government. And we get a fair amount of federal and state money, and we use some of our own money on occasion to buy and rehabilitate property. Sometimes it meant knocking it down. Sometimes it meant making a recreational area. Sometimes it meant building a school, whatever it might be, to improve a neighborhood. And to say this money is not improving neighborhoods is just to be blind. There are stories all over the country of where improvements are being made. I'm not going to argue that every single penny out of this program or any other program has been perfectly well spent. That would be crazy. I have no problem at all looking at this program or any program to come up with things we don't like, to change the rules as to who might be eligible tomorrow, and on and on and on. Those are fine and fair things to say. I'm not going to defend one group or any formula. Those are legitimate things to argue about. But to say that the program doesn't work, and this is where we should start addressing our deficit thing, I think is to be short-sighted. It also says to me, if you don't like the program, that's fine. Then I would strongly suggest that anybody who doesn't like the program pick up the phone to their mayor, to their county administrator, to their governor, and say, send the money back. Every state in the country has gotten money. California has gotten over $886 million. Now, that's not to say, if you don't want it, send it back. Massachusetts only got $106 million. Now, we think it's doing pretty well, so we're going to keep it. But if you don't want it, send it back. Nevada, a much smaller state than Massachusetts, got almost as much money because they got hit harder than we did in this economy. To argue that a few problems that you have, and I'm not even going to suggest that I agree or don't agree, the points are well made. If you don't want one entity, any entity, to get $137 million, fine, let's talk about it. Let's say they don't do it. That's not a problem. If you want to say that we have to change about how this money is being used, fine, let's limit it. Have no problem. But to pretend that a neighborhood, any neighborhood, is well served by ignoring boarded-up properties, by saying walk away from your home, walk away from your business, and the neighborhood will recover without you, is short-sighted and wrong. And to pretend that somehow because we're giving this money away, that that is an inherent evil in and of itself, ignores all the grants that this government gives away, that other governments give away, not just in housing, but in research in any number of fields. And again, if you want to cut out all grants, fine. That is a reasonable and consistent argument. But you also then have to cut out tax credits, because we give out billions of dollars in federal tax credit dollars that do the same thing in housing. All I'm saying is if you want to fix the program, fix it. If you want to turn your back on neighborhoods, go ahead and do that, but not with my help.
Gentlelady from Illinois.
I would yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California.
Gentleman from California is recognized.
Well, I appreciate my good friend admitting that we're giving the money away, because we are. I struck a nerve for some reason when everybody keeps bringing up Chicana por la Casa for $137 million. The reason I think it's egregious is we gave $1.3 billion away to non-government entities, and this one entity got 10% of all the non-government funding that went out. Now, nobody's mentioned it. I mentioned other groups that got $50, $70, $60, $50 million each. I mentioned those groups. But what did HUD say about the money? When I quizzed Mercedes Marquez of HUD, her quote was, "The money is going to homeowners and to American citizens," end quote. The problem I have with this, how do you feel about the people who lost the home? You got a family, they put money into the home. The last couple of years have been tough. They couldn't repair the plumbing, they couldn't replace the appliances, they couldn't afford to replace the broken window, they couldn't paint the house because their house was in foreclosure. They lost that house. Now, we're spending $7 billion, and we have not helped one person in this country remain a homeowner. If your house is going into foreclosure, you're going to lose it. And these dollars are going to be spent to rehab your house and sell it to somebody else. Wake up, America.
Time of the gentleman's expired. The gentlelady from California.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Minnesota.
Gentleman from Minnesota is recognized for 2 minutes.
Yep.
2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, it's amazing to me that we're here at this time when we've seen 4 million foreclosures across America, perhaps 7 million. We've seen neighborhoods devastated. And instead of the majority caucus offering solutions to this foreclosure crisis, instead of them coming forth and saying, you know what, here's what we think we need to do for the American people to stay in their homes, all they want to do is destroy what Democrats have done. It's amazing. It's really something that I hope the American people pay very close attention to. The gentleman on the other end says that, look, somebody's going to buy the house that you lost in foreclosure. If we can be successful with programs like the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, we will create an environment where people will not lose their homes because the value of their homes will not plummet, they will not end up underwater, and people will have somewhere that they can live and a neighborhood that they can be proud of. But because the Republican caucus is making itself abundantly clear, I think it needs to be clear to the American people whose side we're on. The Democrats are on the side of the American people staying in their homes. The Republican caucus is on the side of throwing people out and foreclosing on Americans. And it's a sad, sad day in our Congress. We are in the middle of an enormous debate on the proper role of government. And we believe the proper role of government is to have fair rules, to have real enforcement of our financial regulations, to have real consumer protection, and to intervene when people's neighborhoods are being destroyed by foreclosure. And the Republicans say you're on your own. the market has all the answers, the market answers every question. Well, it doesn't answer every question, especially when the market doesn't have any cops on the beat and when you let the people engage in all sorts of nefarious practices that cause the economic conditions that we're in today. The Republican caucus was in power when the regulations that led to this destruction were in place, and they did nothing. When the Democrats got in charge, we solved it, and now they're trying to disassemble it. I yield back.
The gentleman's time's expired. The gentlelady from Illinois.
At this time, I would like to yield to the distinguished gentleman from Alabama, the chairman of the Financial Services Committee, Mr. Backus, for 4 minutes.
The gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to address two of the things that the minority has raised. One is they've talked about fairness. And I will tell you that there's nothing fair about this program. In fact, it's an unfair program. It's unfair for most Americans. The second thing they've talked about is foreclosures. This program causes foreclosures. This program encourages foreclosures. This program promotes foreclosures. Now let's talk about the foreclosures first, and then we'll talk about fair. What does this program do? Does it prevent foreclosures? No. It encourages foreclosures. It allows nonprofits, community organizations, and cities and counties to buy foreclosed properties. In other words, to create a market for foreclosed properties. And the minority supplied us with two pictures of two of these properties. This is the one in Baltimore, Maryland. This was one of two. I think the other one was in Los Angeles, as I recall. This is the property. Now, just like all these properties, it's not owned by a homeowner. There's no homeowner there. It's owned by a bank or a real estate speculator. It might have been somebody that put someone in this house with what we call an exploding loan. Put someone in that house that couldn't afford it. So what do? We construct a program that says to this bank that owns this property, it's paying taxes to the government on this property, we don't say tear this down, or we don't say we're going to condemn it and convert it and we're going to get it with no charge. No, we buy it. Now, is that right? You said the banks cause this, the lenders. We ought to penalize those who are at fault. Well, how does penalizing a lender who made a loan on this property, how is writing them a check, how is that fair? No, it's not. This is a bailout for lenders and speculators. Now, is it fair? Well, is it fair to our grandchildren and our children? $4 billion every day that goes out of our treasury, more than we bring in, $4 billion a day. In fact, the deficit for February was $230-something billion. Now, every day, they talk about fairness, and I've quoted this with every one of these failed programs. I've quoted Mike Mullen, who's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which says our debt is the biggest threat to our national security, the existence of our country. Well, let's just talk about one thing we do every day. We owe China 9.5% of our debt. 9 to 9.5% is owed to China. Every day we write a check to China because we won't face up to this exploding spending for $120 million a day. Now, they could buy a Joint Strike Force fighter every day and still put $20 million in their pocket every day. They could build an Air Force bigger than our Air Force in 5 years on money they earn from us and that our taxpayers pay, because we won't confront programs like this. Because fair to us is saying yes to everyone except the taxpayers. And oh, there are 4 million foreclosures in this country this year. That's a terrible figure. But I tell you, this program will do nothing but increase that number. And to think that it's fair to our children and grandchildren to devise a program but not have the money to pay it and stick it on our children and grandchildren, it ought to infuriate any of us who are grandparents. It does me. And it's time now to end this foolishness which threatens the very existence of our country.
Time of the gentleman's expired. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
I yield myself 2 minutes to say I am struck by the incongruity of members who have voted for the war in Iraq, a trillion-dollar huge mistake ongoing, who vote to continue what seems to me a futile effort now in Afghanistan. The gentleman from Alabama, we talked about this before, he said that because the Obama administration told him he had to, he voted to send $150 million a year last year, next year, for the next 2 years to the cotton farmers of Brazil. The gentleman opposed a $250,000 limit on subsidies to any individual farmer. In the budget, the gentleman voted, as did most on his side, to send $1.2 billion to beef up Iraqi security forces. What about American security forces? What about giving some money to the cities so when they have to deal with abandoned property, they don't have to take that out of the hides of their police departments and fire departments? Yes, we should reduce the deficit, but to be for the enormous waste in the Pentagon. And by the way, members cite Mike Mullen. I wish, in addition to citing the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they'd make a simple commitment not to vote for the Pentagon money he doesn't want, because members on that side cite his warning about the defense budget, about the deficit, and then force money on him that he thinks is useless. So let's talk about the disparity between people who vote enormous amounts of money. $400 million goes to Afghan infrastructure, and we're told, well, let's have it be done efficiently. I cannot think that in any program in America we are going to be spending the money less efficiently than the $400 million my friends over there have voted to send to Afghanistan. So let's look at this in a reasonable way. And we also believe that this $1 billion, in fact, helps our cities. And there's one fundamental error they make. The assumption is that for every piece of property, by the way, it is not simply foreclosed property, it is abandoned property. For every piece of property that's out there, there is a responsible financial institution whom you can sue and get the money from. That simply isn't true. I'll give myself 30 more seconds. For many of these pieces of property, the cities are left with no recourse. There is no one to do it. And one of the members said the other day in committee, well, they can send out their bulldozer. Yeah, they can pull a firefighter off and hire a bulldozer operator. The fact is that it is not simply for foreclosed property. It's for foreclosed and abandoned property, and the notion that there are no buildings out there in the cities where there is no responsible financial entity is nonsense. And so what we're telling the cities, it's tough. You've had these foreclosure problems. You've had this abandonment problem. You could sell it to the private sector, and the private sector will buy some, but they won't buy it all. I now yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from California.
Gentlewoman from California is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. I think that my colleague from Minnesota said it all. Whose side are you on? Are you on the side of the American taxpayers who trusted us to regulate this industry that had responsibility for these mortgages? Are you on the side of taxpayers who simply wanted to live the American dream, who simply wanted to get into a mortgage so that they could own a home and do what it is the American dream says we can do and we can accomplish? They trusted us to make sure that our regulators did their job. We all let them down. We allowed these mortgage firms, these loan initiators, these big banks to create these exotic products we had never heard of before. Nobody questioned what was a no-doc loan. Nobody asked, what is this teaser loan? Nobody talked about what happens when these loans reset. And the American taxpayer was confronted with a mortgage with 30, 40 pieces of paper, and they signed on the dotted line because they wanted to live the American dream. Little did they know that they would not be able to meet the reset amount 6 months, 1 year, 2 years from now. And so they got caught up in the scheme. It was a huge fraudulent scheme perpetrated on the American people by major financial institutions. And so Americans didn't decide all of a sudden that they didn't want to pay their bills, that they didn't want to pay their mortgage. Something big happened. And what big happened was this big fraud that was perpetrated on the American people came to reality, and the devil came due, and now it's time to pay, and they couldn't afford it. And added to that, the recession that was caused by the subprime meltdown caused people to be in situations where they lost their jobs, or they were in now jobs that paid less than the jobs that they had when the economy was good. And so now we have people who have lost all these homes. They're foreclosed on, they're boarded up, they're abandoned. And guess what? They're bringing down the neighborhoods. Those people who stay in the neighborhoods and keep up their homes, they're losing value because of these boarded up properties and because of these abandoned properties. So the government said, and I said, and Barney Frank said, those of us who created this program said, we have a responsibility to help the American people, because through no fault of their own, now their homes are underwater. The homes have lost value. And so we have the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. The Neighborhood Stabilization Program does give money to counties and cities and nonprofits and all to go in and rehab these properties, put them back on the markets, upgrade the neighborhoods, reduce the cost to fire and police and all of those city agencies that now got to look after these boarded up properties where the animals are coming in and the weeds are growing up and neighbors are saying, my government, please help me. And so that's what the Neighborhood Stabilization Program is all about. And it creates jobs. It creates jobs because now we've got the contractors, the subcontractors, the painters, the realtors all involved in helping to rehab this neighborhood, helping to stabilize these communities, creating jobs, assisting the American taxpayers who got into these situations through no fault of their own. Whose side are you on? Are you on the side of those who rip off our taxpayers, or are you on the side of the taxpayers who sent you here to look after them and to be responsible? I yield back the balance of my time.
Expired. The gentlelady from Illinois.
May I inquire of the chair how much time each side has remaining?
The gentlelady from Illinois has 9.5 minutes remaining. The gentleman from Massachusetts has 11.25 minutes remaining.
All right. At this time, I would yield 2 minutes to the chairman of the Financial Services Committee.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Well, there you go again. Instead of talking about this program, you want to talk about the Brazil cotton deal, or you want to talk about Afghanistan, and I'll talk about those. But before I do, I have a question for you, for my colleagues on the Democratic side who talk about investing in this property. I want you to get a good look at this. Are you willing to put your money up to buy that? Yes.
No, I don't think any private entity would. I'm sorry, may I answer the question? The gentleman, that's why we want to give money to the cities so they can tear it down, because otherwise they'll be stuck with it. I don't think any private investor would put money in there. There's no other way to deal with it, and the way to deal with it is to give them the money so they can tear it down.
Let's tear it down. I agree with you. And let's make the person who owns it tear it down, who happens to be, you know, and this idea that this person can't be found, that this person, I would ask for order.
Gentlemen will suspend. The chair will remind everyone.
We can't find this person. Well, yes, we can.
Will the gentleman suspend? The chair will remind those here that it's appropriate to address one's comments to the chair.
And I would say to the chair, and I appreciate that, that if any of my colleagues want to buy this property, they think it's a good investment, they can hire painters and realtors and put all these people to work. But the taxpayers, they're having trouble paying their own mortgage.
The gentleman yield.
They're having trouble financing their own children's education. And whose side are we on? Listen, this program has benefited less than 2,000 pieces of property or banks, but we've got 12 million American families who are underwater on their mortgage. And do you think it's even fair to pay off, as y'all proposed, 500,000 of those mortgages? How about the other 21 out of 22? You know, you can't pay off all 12 million. You'll break the country. So you say, well, we're going to do the best we can. You're going to pick winners and losers. Let me tell you something. The taxpayers that are paying their mortgages or own their own homes or didn't get into this problem, don't you get the message from November? The American people don't want us paying. They don't want to pay for someone else's obligation. Could I have an additional 1 minute?
Does the gentlelady from Illinois yield the gentleman from Alabama an additional minute?
The gentleman is I yield to him to additional 1 minute.
Thank you. Now, let's talk about this Brazilian cotton. And let me tell you, if I were you, I'd say to the chair, if I were the ranking member, I would talk about anything but buying this property and fixing it up. I'd do anything to avoid that conversation. I'd avoid anything to talk about that we're paying the banks with taxpayer money. But you mentioned Brazil, and you said it was a stupid deal. Well, Ron Kirk, who you said it took a Flip Wilson to do this, well, it was Ron Kirk, trade ambassador, that entered into the agreement. And who hired him? President Obama. So you ought to take it up with the Democratic administration who saddled us with this $150 million obligation. I'd like to introduce that agreement signed by the Obama administration into the record. And I'll close with Afghanistan. I have a son who's in the U.S. Marines. He was in there for 10 years. He's out now. But let me tell you something. I'll spend money to build up an Afghan force so we can bring our young men and women home.
The request of the gentleman will be covered under general leave. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
I yield myself 3 minutes. First of all, the gentleman says, why are you talking about other programs? Why don't you just talk about this program? But he talks about hundreds of billions of dollars of deficit, and this is a billion-dollar program. So he hardly, Mr. Chairman, follows his own rules. He talks about hundreds of billions of dollars, about a billion-dollar program. I am joining him in saying, yes, we have a large deficit, of which this program is an infinitesimal part. Secondly, I am puzzled that my Republican friends, who generally tell us that the President is not very good at his job, hide behind him when it's politically convenient. Yes, this was an Obama deal. The President was wrong. And unlike the gentleman from Alabama, if I think the President has made a foolish decision, I'm going to vote against it, not to send the money to Brazil. It wasn't the President who told you to vote not to limit the subsidies to $250,000 per person. And as to bringing people home from Afghanistan, we will have a chance tomorrow to bring people home from Afghanistan. I will vote for that. Sending $400 million for corrupt infrastructure expenditures isn't bringing anybody home. So let's bring them home. The gentleman will have a chance to do that tomorrow. But then I want to go back to his thing about, do you want to invest? No, he just ignores the facts. This is not just about foreclosed property. It's about abandoned property. He says, do I want to invest? I would now yield to the gentleman. He said, do I want to buy it? Does he know who owns that? Could he give me the address? Well, the gentleman said, if you want to buy it, he said, of course you can find out who owns it. It's not hard. We believe that there are properties where you can't find the owner. Now, the gentleman got the picture. He must know about the property. I'll yield to my friend from Alabama. Would you give us the address and the name of the responsible owner so we can tell the city not to use public money? I'll yield to the gentleman.
Well, let me ask you this. If you
I will yield for the purpose of asking the gentleman a question. He said it's possible to find the address and the owner. I am asking him to live up to what he said. Can he tell us who the owner is? He's got the picture of the property. He says, no, you don't have to spend public money to tear it down.
Well, the gentleman yields so I can answer the question.
Go after the responsible owner. I asked the gentleman, can he tell us who is the responsible owner? And I yield.
It was the person that you wrote the check to. You can't. You have to buy it, and you wrote the check
No, the
out.
gentleman
so
is
you
wrong.
have to know who the owner is.
The gentleman is wrong. I take back my time because the gentleman
You wrote a
is
check to somebody.
Please instruct the gentleman as to the rules. He is blatantly wrong. You do not, it is not simply purchasing property. This gives the city money, and maybe that's why they are so wrong in this. They don't understand the program. It includes giving the city money to go in, and I yield myself another minute because these people take a lot of work to get them to explain it. The fact is that it isn't simply to buy it from a responsible owner. It includes money, as we have tried to explain to them, to demolish property. In fact, in the cities of Detroit and Cleveland, they specifically asked us, the gentleman from Los Angeles amended it, you can use city money to demolish property when there is no owner. So no, you don't write a check to someone who has abandoned the property. I'll yield to the gentleman.
Well, let me ask you this. You know, the IG said they couldn't trace some of this money, and I think we've all figured that out. If we don't know who we're paying because we don't know who the owner is, I guess you couldn't track the money. I guess that explains it.
I'll take back my time to point out to the gentleman, to point out the evasion. The gentleman, I'll give myself another 30 seconds, the gentleman made a big point of saying, buy the property from this person. He doesn't know who owns the property. No one knows who owns the property because no one owns the property. They walked away from it. And what we're saying is part of this is not to pay off a bank. And I would just say, last point, and I agree, though, the taxpayer shouldn't do it. In the bill that passed the conference committee, which authorized this $1 billion, we said that the money should come not from the taxpayers, but from large financial institutions that have more than $50 billion in assets and hedge funds with more than $10 billion. Republican opposition killed it. I'm going to refile that bill today. So I'll invite my Republican colleagues, join me, and we will sponsor this bill, and it's in the committee that the gentleman chairs. Let's pass a bill that says the money that will go to cities to knock down property where they can't find the owner will get it from the large banks and from the large hedge funds. And if the gentleman will agree with that, then this whole argument of the deficit will disappear. But I will predict, Mr. Chairman, that they will find that that's not so persuasive, and they can put up with a deficit when it means saving money for the large banks.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentlelady from Illinois.
May I inquire of the chair how much time is remaining on both sides?
The gentlelady from Illinois has 6.5 minutes remaining, and the gentleman from Massachusetts has 6 3/4 minutes remaining. The gentlelady from Illinois.
I would then yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from California.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Well, my good friend Mr. Frank knows you can go to any land title company and they'll tell you who owns the property. Either the person lost it to a bank that had a loan on it, or the bank owns it now. And if they didn't have a loan on it, they still own the property. And if the property's been abandoned under rules of public safety, the city can go and demolish the property for public safety measures. But the difference is, I'm glad that Mr. Frank said he disagrees with the Obama administration because I think they're wrong too. But in this case, I think you're wrong. This proposal does not make any sense. We believe we're on the side of the people who are paying taxes in this country. Many are going through foreclosure. Many are out of work. We've taken your tax dollars and we've decided to give it to somebody else to buy property from the very banks that they take and say are so awful. Now, there's been a lot of predatory loans made in this country. Lenders should not have made loans to people that took advantage of people, no doubt. But then they foreclose on those very people, and we give private groups and government entities the ability to go buy the property from those banks, take and refurbish it, and sell it to people. Now, I will state again, in California, you can earn over $68,000 and buy one of these homes. You can earn between $73,000 and $80,000 and live in Hawaii, Virginia, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Utah, Alaska, pick up a very good deal. Now, sometimes it might be based on who you know that has the house currently. Are you affiliated with somebody at the city at a good level, or the county? Or do you know one of these non-government agencies, the board of directors, and you say, hey, my cousin would like to buy one of these houses, and by the way, he'd like a good deal. There's nothing in the bill that precludes that. The bill says clearly that you have to sell it for less than you paid and reinvested in it. It does not say how much less you have to sell it for or how much you sell it for. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Mr. Chairman, I'll yield myself 30 seconds. First of all, to say This program has been going on for some time. If there were any of the horror stories to match those hypotheticals, we would have heard from them. But I will say this to the gentleman from California. He admits, under public safety, the city might have to go in and tear it down with no recompense. Here's my proposal, and I invite my Republican colleagues again to do this. Come back with us to when we had a bill that said this program will be paid for not by the taxpayers, but by an assessment on financial institutions with more than $50 billion in assets and hedge funds with more than $10 billion in assets. I will introduce this bill tomorrow. They can give us a hearing on it, mark it up, and it won't cost the taxpayers a cent, and it will save the city's money. I now yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from New York.
Gentlelady from New York is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent